事件最近だ近いぞぶっ殺せぶっ殺すんだ
What's up, everyone? Welcome to 3 out of 10 anime fans recommend you check out this podcast if you ever get reincarnated into another world, aka 3 out of 10 anime. This show is all about having fun conversations to rank anime based on a standard set of criteria so they can be organized, compared, and contrasted. We discuss a different show or movie each week, so whether you're a seasoned weeb or new to the genre, we know you'll have a good time. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here's the agenda for each episode. We do a brief overview with our first impressions of the show, 5 minutes, then we jump into our personal enjoyment, how much we each liked the show, and we rank it from 1 to 10 based on our own personal rubrics. Then we have a technical assessment next, where we collectively rank the show on a scale of 1 to 10 based on a combined rubric. And then finally, we give you some comparisons and recommendations to other shows you might enjoy if you liked this one, or if you hated it, what you should watch instead. I'm Brett.
I'm Skyler.
And I'm Braydn.
We are your hosts from the United States. We each have varying opinions, tastes, and backgrounds, which should result in some interesting and relatable dialogue, no matter who you are. We're grateful you're joining us for our discussion about this week's show, Cells at Work, an educational comedy available on Netflix, Funimation, and Crunchyroll. And we're discussing Season 1, all of Season 1, meaning there will be spoilers, so expect them. If you don't want spoilers, you should pause, go watch the show, come back to the episode after. So without further ado, what did you guys think of Cells at Work?
It's a comedy? Wait,
Yeah?
I missed the mark on this one. It's a comedy? Okay.
Yeah, if you go type in Cells at Work, it says genre comedy / biology.
I guess I missed the mark on the comedy as well. There were
Yeah.
numerous elements, but I didn't feel like that was the genre it was in.
Interesting.
I guess
Good.
if you take like the amount of screen time at which something ridiculous is happening,
Yeah.
and you take the amount of screen time that something educational is happening, it becomes an educational comedy.
I mean, I won't descript that at all. It's just, it
Well-
definitely hits a bigger, stronger note in a different genre than comedy.
Well, actually,
I don't know.
What would you
no.
categorize?
No. Now that he said that, I agree for this reason. The main character is the red blood cell who constantly gets lost. And a bit of the premise for comedy
Okay.
is you take a character or someone who is put into a job who is inherently bad at that job or task. So again, a great example of like a comedy scenario is take a dumb detective who is really good at being a detective.
Pink Panther. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the premise of comedy. So you take a
Okay.
red blood cell who is terrible at her job and make her the main character.
Okay, well, just because you managed to fit the word comedy into the box that is slotted for something obviously different than comedy doesn't mean it is a comedic anime. Thank you very much.
What, Bryn, what genre would you classify it as?
I mean, I've never seen an anime like this one. This one's not really. It's not really an anime. This is an educational show at its very truest heart, and should be used at like schools or whatnot, like Bill Nye the Science Guy or Crash Course or something. It's just
Or
an
my
anime version.
medical anatomy class in college.
Yeah, why not?
No, honestly,
Yeah.
in a lot of the comments for Sales at Work, there are comments about like, hey, I went and watched this one episode as a review for this test and I passed because of Sales at Work.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a fun way to learn.
It's almost entirely a information dump, but it's flavored anime. It has like anime tropes that like guide it through anything. And honestly, like when I was first watching it, I didn't get it. Like I just didn't get it. It just didn't
Really?
make any sense to me because like, what? There's not. I don't understand why anything is happening in this story. But once I realized that this was just a textbook disguised as an anime, I'm like, oh. This is not for me at all. I don't care about any of this. This is like a YouTube wiki line at 3 a.m. You're just like, oh, how did I get here? I don't know. I'm watching Cells at Work when you have blood cells and junk. That's what
Right.
this says. Oh, okay, sure. Oh, what am I going to learn here today?
My first impression was super similar to yours, where the first episode I was like, okay, this is what this is. And so if I was going to sum up my first impression of the show, it would be a really well executed educational comedic textbook that I don't care about because I'm no longer in school.
Hey.
That was my first. That's like if I summed up my first impression. That's what it is.
Hey, I was there for it. I'm like, hey, if you're gonna do an anime, you put that much work to make an anime about like something schoolwork. You know what? I'll see what you got. That's weird. It's fresh. You know, it's new. It's hip. There's no genre for it.
I liked it though because it was a fresh take on essentially that genre of content. I guess the difference for me is that I was watching it as it came out, and so it wasn't something I binged. It was like, oh, the new episode's out. I guess I'll watch it.
I do have a question for you. You said that genre of
yes,
content.
Please clarify
what else
that.
Have you seen that is like cells at work?
So there's
we're breaking our segments by doing this, but that's fine because you brought it up. So go ahead.
This would be in the recommendations section.
Sure, hit it. Just give us.
There's a few slice of life anime where they like focus in on one subject like this. So, for example, one would be called Asteroids in Love, where essentially it's like these people where they're really enthusiastic about space. But because it's like a slice of life, it's just kind of this group of high school girls where they have to share like their club space with a different club. And so trying to convince the other people to kind of join them. And so they kind of focus in on that. Or another one, Yuru Camp, where it's a slice of life, but they go into all these like camping equipment and camping practices and all the different ways to camp. And so again, it's so a slice of life is what it is.
Slice of life. Actually, I think that does fit a little bit better.
I think that fits. I think that tracks.
I would classify Cells at Work a little bit more as a weird slice of life.
Yeah.
A fantasy slice of life, because obviously red blood cells aren't people.
What? Wait, I was supposed to be warning this whole time. They're not people in there? They don't have little push carts? That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, the slice of life generally focuses, like the ones that I've enjoyed, that is, they focus in on one subject, and you learn a lot about that one subject just by nature of it being a slice of life. For example, actually, A Place Further Than the Universe. How much did you learn about Antarctica by watching that show?
Okay, but that's different.
I do think it's very different.
How?
Okay.
Because it's
go ahead, Braydn. Go ahead.
I'm saying the same thing you are. We can just be like, just do this little thing, you know.
Okay, I think it's super, super different because the main point of A Place Further Than the Universe is to tell a beautiful story of friendship and emotions and growth and overcoming trials, whereas the main point of this show is to give you an anatomy lesson with some comedy sprinkled in there.
And a really angry white blood cell.
So I think that like the primary reason why each anime exists is so different that those ones to me are pretty separate, but the other two you mentioned, I totally see how they are very similar.
Well, and that's true even for those ones, where again, the focus isn't on whatever subject it is, it's on those characters and of the journey that these characters are on. But again,
if they were on a journey
further than the universe is that you're still picking up all this extra information on the side. But yes, I will agree that Cells at Work places an emphasis on the anatomy and diseases that are portrayed in the anime first and foremost, but they kind of figured out a way to make it a little more entertaining through the characters they threw in.
So let's do this. It sounds like we're transitioning already into our second topic. So let's jump into our personal enjoyment. And for anyone who wants to follow like how we rank shows, you can find our own personal rubrics on our Reddit page or our Facebook page, and you can see our own rankings there. But let's talk about what we did enjoy and didn't enjoy and how that contributed to our rankings of the show.
Yes.
And I'll go first with something.
Please.
So we've already hinted at the fact that Braydn and I didn't particularly love it because it felt like going to class every time to watch the show. And for me, like, I enjoy watching anime because it takes my mind off of stressful things like work. And so watching this show just felt too much like studying, that I couldn't enjoy it because I was like, I'm here to watch anime to have fun and relax. And yeah, it's a fun show, but I don't like feeling like I'm watching a documentary while I'm trying to relax. So for like, that's one of the main things that detracted for my enjoyment, was I felt like I was studying again for my medical anatomy finals, which, by the way, I don't think I passed a single one. I still passed the class, but dude, they're hard.
You should use cells of work, man. You would have figured it out.
Do you know how many like veins and bones you have in your body, and you got to name them all?
At least two, I think.
There's at least two. So that was one of the main things that detracted from my personal enjoyment of the show. Probably the main thing.
Oh, so what would your score be? Are you doing scores now?
We'll do scores at the end of the conversation.
To round them up? Yeah.
I don't know. What, Skyler, what do you enjoy or not enjoy?
So again, I think that my experience watching it was a bit different, because for me, the whole biology side of things, I don't have that association of like studying in college and stressing out over the exams for that particular subject. Even some of my YouTube feed centers around a lot of biology and just essentially this subject. And again, where I was watching it on a week to week, I never burned out on it. It wasn't something that it's definitely not something I would binge. No, not something I would binge. It's something that was fun to pick up, kind of watch from time to time, and then put it back down. And so for a personal rating, I think I would give it either a 7 or an 8, so 7.5.
All right. One of the things I did enjoy about it is, and Skyler, you mentioned this, I did enjoy that it was a highly accurate show. Like, if we're saying that like it's like good enough you could use it to study for something, I do think it was a highly accurate show and very well conceptualized. Like they really had a target in mind, and they shot for that target and they hit it square in the bullseye. And it was impressive to watch them tell or teach you anatomy while telling a narrative, no matter how thin that narrative may be.
It was pretty good.
No matter how thin it may be, they incorporated some kind of story. And so, like, actually, my enjoyment of the show was highest when I was watching Dr. Mike react to episodes of Cells at Work, because he's a doctor who's like, they did this and this and this and this and this and this. And so I was like, wow, that was really cool. That was fun. I had way more fun watching him watch the show than I had watching the show.
You know, and I almost would say if the main characters, the white blood cell and the red blood cell, they don't have names. They just have numbers, by the way. I just looked this up.
Yeah.
If those two dinguses actually did a host or a commentary like sidebar, and they did it in an anime format, I think I'd enjoy it more. I think that would like actually hone in on what it's trying to do, rather than this like pseudo story thing they end up going up with.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Because I mean, it was interesting. That's what I'll give this anime. It was interesting to me. It was more. I would tell people to watch it because it's something to experience. It's just a different anime. You don't find stuff like this. That people make stuff like this, and because it's absolutely unique corner on its own market that it made, in my opinion. I don't. It's I just want to give kudos for that. Honestly, what it ended up trying to do, not making a story, not making really characters that I interacted with, but like using the anime tropes to talk about blood and sneezing or rockets or whatever they do. It was fun. Sure, why not?
Rocket.
Yeah, the sneeze was a rocket. Why not?
Yeah, you touched on one point that I like, that I want to dive in a little bit more, which is that they attempted to put some underlying threads tying this whole anime together, But that's one point that I think they just
Yeah.
don't even put it in there. Like
Yeah,
it was
Oh,
such
God.
like such an underwhelming part of the whole show that at times, like, okay, for me personally, I was like, I would much rather focus either on their relationship or just have it not exist. If this is going to be an educational comedy, like, make it that. And I
Yeah,
see how
'cause,
that
like,
could.
Episode 7 or 8, they brought in, oh, by the way, you two knew each other from back in the academy days or something. And
Yeah.
okay, what does that
So?
mean? That means
Yeah.
nothing to anybody. Blood cells
Yeah.
live like a day or something like that.
Which, okay, and,
Yeah.
and here's my argument for why I'm like, I wish that didn't exist, because I can think of something they could have done better than that. Which is, rather than trying to spend screen time on a meaningless, thin relationship, actually try to tell the bigger narrative of this organism that they're living in, almost like Osmosis Jones style.
Uh-huh.
Like, actually tell
I
a
knew
story.
you were going to do that.
Yeah, actually tell a story of a human person, and like, oh, we find out that because they did these things and these things, and I know they kind of touch on it, but still, it's like spend more screen time on the actual body mechanism and how like the things over time are actually contributing to or hurting this person's overall health, and like actually do that rather than spending screen time on
And
some
add
pointless
some like love
relationship.
interests on the side, and not those mommy T cells or whatever those things were called that came in like 4 episodes in or something.
I think
Yeah.
they're the macrophages.
Macrophages, yeah.
Great. Yeah, why?
You could have a very
It's
interesting Cells at Work
just
episode
anime.
on the reproductive system.
Yeah, great.
If you want that,
I'm just saying.
no.
I'm
If you
just
want-
saying.
If you want that, you need to watch
Season
Cells
2
at Work
coming to
Code-
you.
No. Cells at Work Code Black. They go there.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they go
Wait,
there.
what's Code Black?
It's the more. Well, the Code Black essentially. So it's actually a bit of a pun.
The more
on
what?
a-
Is this
on
an
a
adult
black-
version?
yes, essentially.
What?
But
Are you serious?
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
have way more fun watching that than this one.
One of the episodes focuses on an erection.
What?
Hold up. Code
Wait,
Black.
of this show? This anime?
Well, it's Cells at Work Code Black.
We missed on something here major. I don't
See,
know
that
what
sounds
was wrong.
So
way
Cells
funner
at
to
Work
watch.
Code Black and Cells at Work Season 2 aired at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Ah, yeah, episode 3 is called Erection, Ejaculation, and Emptiness.
Yeah.
5 is overwork, delirium, and hair loss. That's funny.
Yeah.
Smoking, alcohol. Great.
Depression, gout, and rebellion. See, now it's just hitting too close to home.
Yeah. Okay, hold up. Let's do a retake on this. Let's take a pause. Let's take a detour. Let's just watch this anime now. Oh my
That's
goodness.
funny.
Is it the same? But is it the same tempo?
No, it's a different body, different person.
Okay, well the first body doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Is it the same tempo of show? Is it all about the
You are following a red blood cell as they're going through the body, trying to do their job, and there is a white blood cell that the red blood cell constantly runs into. So there's a lot of carryovers. There's a lot of similarities between the two.
Okay.
But essentially, in Cells at Work, it's like a mostly healthy person that constantly gets hurt or infected with random things.
Uh-huh.
Whereas Code Black, and this is where the Code Black kind of comes from, is it's referring to a black workplace. And if you're familiar with what black workplaces are in Japan,
Yeah.
it's where they overwork their employees. This is where people literally work themselves to death. And so essentially the concept behind Code Black is that you have this person who is in really bad health, does not take care of themselves. And so it's a horrible working environment for all the cells that are trying to keep this stupid guy alive.
You mean just like Osmosis Jones?
No, Code Black is closer to Osmosis Jones than regular Cells at Work. I'll put it that way.
Oh my sweet glory. Okay.
I feel like episode 9 is Suctinum. What is that?
What'd you say?
Suctinum?
I don't.
Calamity athlete's foot in the meaning of work?
No, am I saying that right? Oh, maybe it's not episode 9. Skyler, am I saying right? Suctinum?
I have no clue.
What are you sucking?
Hold on.
Suctinum these nuts!
Hey!
Got him!
Oh my glory.
Okay, we've gone
Okay.
off. We've gone off. Okay, what else did you guys like or not like about
Yeah,
this
let's-
show that we actually watched?
Let's go back to the little kid ride over here.
The little kid ride.
Are you saying that because they were constantly getting cut and
They
bruised?
were.
The platelets.
They really were. Oh, the little platelets. Oh
They
my
were
gosh.
adorable.
Yeah.
That were the best part of the show. My favorite part of the show was the platelets.
The platelets
I
and
mean-
Code Black turned gangster.
Wait, stay on this show.
I mean, yeah. So the character types. Well, I mean, I have a hard time saying character because like they gave this amount of iota of personality to the main characters, but they're all the same, which is good for the textbook thing, but it's bad for like storytelling. Because like all the platelets are little kids, and the macrophages are all the or whatever they did, and the T cells.
Maid-sama,
Yes.
which is another show.
What is it?
called
Kayabashi?
It's called Maid-sama.
Oh, that's a different one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So like each of the characters do well represent, like, I guess if you need to put an emotion onto a machine, they did it well. Like the platelets, they're helpful little ones that get in there and like do their best to like make a little thing or whatever. And the more like serious gung ho killers are like these full adults that need to like go and hunt down and like be professional and the like. And the white blood cell, which I think they say a couple times, they'll have a long life. They're kind of youthful, you know, and they're running around doing their own thing. Like that, is well done. That's good. You know, again, in a textbook stance, the pull characters out of there, kudos to them. Because they did it, and people like it, and there's 2 seasons, and whatever this Black show is, Code Black show is.
So Skyler, what would you rank the show for your enjoyment, 1 to 10, and why?
So the enjoyment ranking that I would give it is a 7.
Okay.
And the reason being is because, kind of like you said, where it's like it is explaining a very technical aspect, well, just very different technical aspects of the body and how it fights off this infection. What this infection even is, how it operates, how it tries to invade and proliferate through the body, how your body responds to in attempting to protect itself and shut down these invasions. Or even kind of like he was mentioning, it's like, oh, you cut yourself. Well, how does your body heal from that? And so that's what the focus of the show was on. And yes, it made a lot of the characters bland, as you said, but at the same time, like the one character that you're kind of focusing on, they were the one exception to that because they were the one that were always getting lost. They were the one that was always getting into trouble. And so in that sense, you know, I think that the characters actually fulfilled their roles perfectly because if the characters were too memorable, then you remember the story more about what's going on rather than the education and the technical content that they were actually trying to deliver on.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Braydn, what would you give it? So Skyler, you give it a 7.
Yes.
Yep. As per my ranking scale, which is a little bit different than yours two's, I'll give work a 5, which is the base number I need to be able to say, oh, I'd recommend this anime to somebody. Because I watch a lot of shows that I don't want to finish the first season, or I watch it and like I would never recommend this to anybody. A lot of anime fall into those categories, but this anime I would recommend. It's interesting, and it does something unique. And if you like it, like a lot of the people do, maybe you'll find a good show out of it. Or if you need it for like school or something, I'd recommend it for that purpose.
That's a good point.
Kind of like you were saying, Brett, I don't need to know about these parts of the cell. I'm not trying to take a test on the names of these things. And there wasn't really much a story for me to like get hooked or inspired by or any character that like I really attach to or like it to. There's just not that anime, so I wouldn't really go back and watch it again. But it's a fun little note, and by fun little note, and I would recommend I give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay, and you made a good point there. It actually on IMDb got a 7.5 out of 10, Crunchyroll 4.7 out of 5, and on my anime list a 7.6 out of 10. So it is a fairly high ranked show. Like it was received really, really well enough that another season's coming out, and they've got Code Black.
Code Black.
So
hide your kids, hide your wife.
Hide your kids, hide your wife. They crawl in your windows. Anyway, okay, so my personal enjoyment rating.
Yes.
So I would give the show a 4.5. And that's because for me, a show that I give a 5 is pretty much smack in the middle of like, it's decent and I wouldn't really care if I finished it or if I didn't. I don't necessarily dislike it enough to stop watching. Act it like, just say like, oh, I'm not going to watch this anymore. But it also, my life would not be any different if I actually finished it. A 4 is it fails to entertain me or it bothers me enough that I actually decide to stop watching. So I give it a 4.5 because I made it most of the way through the show, and I finished the show by watching recaps of the episodes. I probably made it like 2/3 of the way through. So I did stop watching near the end of the first season, just because I just felt so worn down by just the same thing and the education just being the constant focus. And I love learning things, but again, I enjoy watching anime to be primarily entertained and feel myself enveloped into a world that is stressful in a good way. And for me, this was stressful in a not good way. So 4.5 is what I would give the show, which means that with a 7, a 5, and a 4.5, our average enjoyment is 5.5 for Cells at Work.
5.5 enjoyments out of 10 enjoyments.
Out of 10 enjoyments.
10 whole enjoyments.
But that is enjoyment.
Yeah.
How did the show perform on a technical level? A reminder for everyone out there, if you want to find our technical rubric, you can also find that the same place as our enjoyment rubrics on our Reddit page, Facebook page, wherever. We'll have it linked everywhere. And there's an actual rubric that we try to grade each show on. There's 4 topics: art, story, characters, and delivery. We rank the show on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being terrible, 5 being exceptional, and then we take the sum total and divide it by 2 to give us a 1 to 10 technical rating of the show. And we come up with that collectively. So from your guys' perspective, let's start with art. This is music, animation, art style. How did it do?
You know what? I thought I did okay. It did just okay.
I think it was good.
See, I'm very shocked because I'm leaning more on the really good side. I'm like, okay, the music was nothing spectacular. It was very repetitive, and it was there, and it was acceptable. The music was acceptable.
Yeah.
But I think the animation was actually really good. Really good. They use CG really well.
That was the point I wanted to talk on, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
So, yeah, one thing about CG in anime is that, for me at least, it is very, very, very obvious when they use it. But I really liked how they did it in Cells at Work, because I don't remember a time where they used it on the main characters. It was always in the background. It was always something going on somewhere else where you weren't quite paying attention. And the reason that that is a good thing for Cells at Work is because, again, the whole concept of the body is that it's busy, it's big at that scale. And so where you have all these characters running around, by having it be in CG, it allowed them to get a lot more done compared to if they were to try and do it traditionally.
That's okay. That's really interesting point. I really like that. That's a really interesting point.
But then, yeah, kind of like you said, the music, I honestly don't remember any music from the show. And that's why I'm giving it a good rating, is because, yeah, the art was really good. The use of CG, really good. Like, there were some beautiful vistas, which is really good. The art,
Can we-
not the
can
art, the
we-
music. Okay.
Can we touch on the art style? I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that I don't think any other art style would have been acceptable for this show. That's how well fit I think this art style was for this show.
Go
Like,
into that a little bit. Like, define more of art style for us.
Okay, yeah. So art style. What I mean by that is the characters were anatomically, they were anatomically proportional to human sizes, but at times it was exaggerated when it needed to be, and like the color schemes they chose and the way that the animations actually happened, like everything was actually very fluid, which the body fluid, and like the blood explosions over the top. Like I think that like all the things that go into like the style of art, like the way that they're animated, the way that they're designed, the way that they function within the world, and the physics of the animations. I think all of that stuff just was perfect for the show. I think the art style was spot on. That's my take.
To add on to that, we're probably gonna have to drop a link to the doctor that you referenced to his YouTube channel and some of his
Dr.
React, Dr. Mike,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the things that I picked up on, but that Dr. Mike reiterated and then just went another mile on, and I learned a lot from watching his videos as well, was all of the details incorporated into the designs of the characters, kind of as you mentioned, that were very subtle hints as to the functions of what these things were. For
Like
example,
platelets.
like platelets, or like dendrites, where they have like these little tree things on their hats, because it's like, oh no, that's kind of what the cell looks like.
It's a receptor cell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of incorporations into the character designs, like you said, into that art style, that were really subtle tie-ins to the actual mechanics of the characters. And another great example is actually the red blood cells themselves. Like their hats was kind of a representation of the blood cells.
Yes.
And when they're kids, they have that little glob on there because that's the nucleus, and they lose it when they become
When they mature.
full-blown red blood cell.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like you said with the art style, even in each of the character designs or each of the character stereotypical designs, there was a lot of detail and attention put into designing them in such a way that it clues you in as to what they actually do or look like.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of morphs into our character rubric section. But Braydn, do you have anything you want to add on the art specifically?
Not specifically. I mean, personally, I thought it was good. I don't have anything especially noteworthy like you guys found with the CGI or the like, except that they, like, their characters and the world was very well represented in the anime. I don't need to add anything more than you've already said, but yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. They did portray the body in anime form. Good job.
Looking at our rubric here, a grade of 4 being good is the composition often delivers powerful moments in an excellent fashion. 5, exceptional, the composition always delivers powerful moments in an excellent fashion. I think in this show, the powerful moments are the blood explosions, the character interaction, the design of the world,
the rocket.
the rocket. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward a 4.54. 4.
I'm with that.
But
3.54.
3.54. Do we if we land on 4, a good ranking in art, would we all feel comfortable with that? Composition often delivers powerful moments in an excellent fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I would push more of a dip if I remember more of the music. Maybe that's a mark against it, but
true.
If half the ranking is about its music, I don't know.
Well,
it delivered very strongly on the thing it did well, which is the world.
The music is why I'm not giving it an exceptional when it comes to the art, is because it wasn't. But the animation and the art style, those were all fine. Those were all really good, and they nailed it pretty consistently throughout the entire show.
Well, I would not put this up to a 5. Even if they use CGI well, it's still, if I may say, pretty normal anime at a lot of points. Because
okay, that's
if
true.
I think about points like Studio Ghibli or the start of Yuri on Ice, or other just like Your Name, like gorgeous animation. This does
True.
not hit that mark.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I'd actually agree with that. Where, I mean, it's not necessarily a comparison to other anime, it's a comparison to the rubric. I don't think that I could classify Cells at Work as the whole composition of art always delivers a powerful experience, because there are many moments where you're just kind of sitting there watching them.
You're soaking in whatever they got in the screen.
Watching them talk about whatever. Not that that doesn't happen in other
I'm
shows.
not swept away by this show. Not in the slightest.
And again, to me, another thing about that is, again, just the smart use of resources. Because, like, if movies did not have that level of animation and beauty, what are they doing? A show does not have those kind of resources to make every scene movie-level gorgeous.
Sure.
And so, if anything, shows have a slightly different rubric for me because of that. And so, yeah, if there's a scene where they're talking, and it's still pretty, but it's not overly done, then to me, it just means that they actually use the resources intelligently and didn't waste resources unnecessarily in areas where they didn't need it.
Okay, well, that's gonna affect their score. Their technical bit is I'm not gonna say their budget. Like, I've seen beautiful animations off low budgets.
I've also seen shows where they put too much budget into some really spectacular scenes.
Absolutely.
And then the rest of it sucks.
True.
So what I'm saying is this doesn't do anything exceptional, except for they well realize the world.
I would agree. Skyler, what do you think if we land on a 4? Do you think that's
4?
We can reach a consensus of 4?
Yeah, 4 would be the rating that I give it.
Okay. Braydn, 4?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We'll agree on 4. So, in the terms of art, Cells at Work delivers as a composition powerful moments in an excellent fashion, often. All right. Story, plot devices, tone/mood, continuity, world building, pacing, rules and systems, and tropes.
Forget your pitchforks.
This is where
let's burn it down.
This is where, like, on all of the different pieces,
man.
I swing like a pendulum wildly. Yeah. Like when it comes to like plot and plot devices, or just like, okay, plot overall, like 1, like no plot whatsoever.
Not
plot
needed.
Devices.
See, this is one of the things. Like, we talked about how much this should be a textbook anime. So, like, it's hard
your
to
textbook
say.
Doesn't have a plot.
Yeah, your textbook doesn't have a plot. It shouldn't have a plot.
That's not a history book, I should say.
So I mean, I feel bad putting this anime up against a story thing, but it attempted it. You know what I mean? It had the goal to try and not hit its mark at the slightest.
Yeah.
Run them down, boys.
Well, to that, I actually would say that I won't give it a very high score in plot, because there is no overarching plot throughout the season. But each individual episode did kind of have a plot that it followed through.
I'll give it that.
And that's just an episodic show, and there are plenty of those. For example, Psych.
That's true.
There's not really an overarching storyline for Psych, but no, there is.
I know what you mean.
I
but for the most part, an episodic show is self-contained within one episode.
Yeah.
I would toss you more Cowboy Bebop, but yeah.
Cowboy Bebop is kind of the same
Cowboy
thing.
Bebop, perfect example.
Yeah.
Frustratingly so. I wanted more story. Tell me more of the A-plot. I don't care that for 4 episodes you do absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden he has a dream in the last 2 minutes of episode 7, and you get a tiny flashback. Yeah. I want more of that. Okay. We'll save that for another episode.
That's another episode.
So here I am wildly swinging in Cells at Work. Plot, like 1. Tone and mood, like 4. Continuity
3.
doesn't really matter. World
well,
building?
Actually,
no. Continuity is pretty good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
It keeps the role and characters of the stories as like a straight line.
Okay, yes. Okay, there you go. True. Consistent. It is consistent, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, okay, rules and systems actually really high, because it followed the rules of biology, which was very impressive, and it followed them consistently.
World building falls under that as well.
World building, high. Pacing, doesn't matter because you have nothing to pace. It's just it was episodic. It was there, and then tropes kind of doesn't apply. So like I'm kind of
no tropes would definitely apply
It does
here.
apply. It does apply.
Braydn brought it up with the macrophages.
Mommy macrophage every time.
Mommy macrophage. Okay, that's true.
Those are tropes.
That's true. Yep, that's true. That's true. White blood cell constantly saving red blood cell. I guess that
Yep.
It established itself as its own trope within that series.
Mm-hmm. True. So I'm kind of like, this is a hard one for me on story to rank. Like, obviously, if I just said, does Cells at Work have a good story? I'd say no.
No. Yes. So that's what I want to say. Is like, somehow we started off on the one anime that just breaks our rubric for story, because on individual points, we can actually talk ourselves into saying, yeah, actually, it did actually have good continuity and plots within like an episode and junk, and it had like a whole little thing. No, this did not have a good story.
I agree. So here's our rubric. What our rubric says is, for a bad show, it was sometimes nonsensical, inconsistent, boring, confusing, ambiguous, unoriginal, and disappointing. For 3, a meh ranking, on par with what you would expect from a decent show. I'm honestly kind of landing in the meh category because it didn't really tell a story. It didn't really do, like, it was not a great story, but it did set out to accomplish something with the story it was trying to tell, and I think it did it. So I would expect it from a decent show. I don't know.
4 is it was often consistent, well paced, comprehensible, consummate, on point, mood point, and unique.
Okay, but those words paint it in that light again. That's what I'm saying. Is like, go back to 2. Nonsensical, yes.
No.
Inconsistent, no. Boring, yes. Confusing, yeah. Ambiguous, yes. Unoriginal, yeah.
No.
No. It's super original. Even you said it's super original.
I said it's original in the fact of its like existence, but not in like storytelling. Its storytelling is not original. It doesn't do anything like ambitious at all. It just tells what it needs to tell.
I see
the blood.
I see where you're going with that. I think the difference on this one where we're coming to is like, okay, the concept around which the story was built, super unique. Like, no one's ever done it before, really. It stands on its own island.
Yes.
The methods used to tell the story, super uninteresting and boring. even though the concept is super interesting.
Yes. I'll give it a polar 3, maybe, because of that weird stretch it has.
I would give it 3.5.
I would lean it down. Like, I don't want to give it a good score. Okay, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. It lands at I guess a 2.8 if I have to just give a little needle in there, say it's not a 3.
And see, I'm just so split with this one because the plot was non-existent. The plot devices were typical from what you would expect from any show that follows the hero's journey in every single episode, where there's an initial problem, the heroes try to solve it, they think they solve it, something else goes wrong, miraculous solution, and it's over. And so, like, no episode am I sitting there thinking, oh man, what's gonna happen? Like, oh, I know what's gonna happen every episode. And you could argue that every single show follows that same pattern, but this was so mathematically sliced that it made it, to me, super uninteresting. The tone and mood, I think, were pretty consistent. Continuity. The world building, I think, was great. Pacing is pointless. Like, it was the same every time.
There was nothing to pace.
Rules and systems, high, tropes, low. So I'm honestly just landing smack in the middle because some things were really great, some things were not. And so I'm landing at 3 because it's so polarizing in story. For me, I'm landing at 3. I could. I could. Here's the problem we're at. I could push it to a 2.5, but I could also feel like pushing it to a 3.5. I'm
just saying,
in between.
We found the one anime that does not have a story and is better when you don't consider it as a story, and we have to rate it on being a story, and it marks somehow on the we have the wrong scale for this. Just give it a 3, get out of here. That's what I'm saying. Just get it out of here.
I'm thinking that the storytelling in the show was bad, but the concept was good. And so that's why I'm landing at a 3.
No.
I'm staking my claim at 3.
2.0.
I want 3. Braydn wants 2.5. Skyler wants 3.5.
Just throw it at 3. Get it
So
out
are
of
we
here.
stuck?
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
Right,
we're
I'm
just
done.
out at 3.
Move on.
Were you gonna say one other thing, Sky? I don't want to cut you off.
So again, to me, I don't know. It's kind of like, I accepted very early on that there wasn't going to be an overarching story. And so because of that, my story rating is essentially on the individual shows as they happen throughout the season. And so when I look at story and storytelling, I'm not looking at all 12 episodes together. I'm looking at each individual episode. Or in the one case where there was cancer, the 2 episodes.
I would propose, though, that even in one-off episodes, the story of each episode was weak.
Well, and again, they're not fantastic, but they did the purpose. They conveyed what it was that they were trying to convey for that story. Because again, whether it's cancer or an abrasion or whatever it is, the story was brought up, and it was handled in a way that, again, made sense. It was decently well paced for that episode. But again, it's for that one episode. It wasn't, again, like you said, it was hyper predictable. But that's not necessarily a lot of docking. That's not a big reason for me to dock points for me, I guess.
And I think that's exactly why I feel so good at putting it at 3, because our definition of a 3 is on par with what you would expect from a decent show.
Yeah. I don't talk about it anymore. I'm upset at this anime for existing. And they can be talking about it like this. I'm talking about any other anime like this.
Well, let's go. Okay, so let's move on to characters. We have character design, development, motivation, action and inaction, relationships, and personality.
Oh, this show's gonna kill me.
Oh boy. Design
Right.
really good. The design is really good.
Yes, I agree. Super good.
Development, I guess the red blood cell kind of had some development? Maybe?
Not really? No.
I should hope not.
Really?
Well, no,
I mean...
There was like the one episode where it was essentially like a tour of the body, where she successfully completed a route on her own.
I mean, if you have a bag of rice and you put a single grain of rice in the bag, you've technically made the bag have more mass.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
but
Like I said,
by
it's
much.
not a lot, but that's like the only example of any development I can think of in that show.
So we'll go design, thumbs down. Development, thumbs down.
Wait, hold on.
Wait, design thumbs down?
Design-
No,
thumbs
sorry.
up.
Design, thumbs up. Development, thumbs down. Character motivation.
They're all hyper motivated to do their job, so that's what works.
Technically, their motivation is completely logical.
I hate it so much.
Technically, it is. I'd give that a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, what about an action inaction? The things that the characters chose to do versus chose not to do. I'm actually going to bring up a point here. Even though the show was supposed to be an educational comedy, I still think the concept of, a red blood cell that doesn't know what it's doing is stupid. I think it's stupid. It doesn't make sense. You have a highly logical show with a completely ridiculous concept of a character. I hated the red blood cell. If that was my red blood cell, I would donate blood just to get the red blood cell out of my body and exit the stupidity from myself. I hated that character. So the inaction part of this show, I give a burning thumbs down because it infuriated me.
completely agree with you. It's just not in tempo. It's there's one character with personality and we don't like it. there's like, so because we already like skipped over design. The design are their character. They don't have individual characteristics. And when they did, we hated it. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
And maybe if you dig the main white blood cell, it's supposed to have his own, like, he's supposed to not be like other white blood cells. But functionally he is, and that's all he really does. Is his function. Just a little bit more protective of this red blood cell thing, which
that's the only unique trait I can think of that particular white blood cell, is that he's just more protective of that particular red blood cell. Otherwise,
which is also
he's a white blood cell.
Which is also stupid.
Okay. It's like, oh look, there's a pathogen. Go. That's it. Like that's one track mind.
Yep. He gets a little antenna, little spidey senses going off.
The next one requires no discussion. Relationships.
Relationships? What relationships?
Yep. The one that's in the textbook.
Yep. And then personality.
We kind of already went into that.
I would actually propose
what?
That the personality was strong, because even though the personality was supposed to be an archetype of things, it was very fascinating and technically, I think, accomplished well how they assigned a personality to a to a construct. Like, red blood cells have this type of personality, white blood cells have this type of personality, platelets have this type of personality, and it lended to the actual story and the characters. So, like, I actually think personality, if you don't look at the individual character's personality, but you look at the way a personality was assigned and portrayed to a construct, I actually think that was done really, really well. Like, fascinatingly well.
I respect it, but I don't think it was done exceptionally well, personally. And I think they were able to trope their way into making this an anime and not make interesting personalities. They were rote. They got their function done, and then that was their beginning and end all. Which, again, for what they were trying to do, was useful. It's useful to talk about how to make any kind of animation or story, in quotes, out of this concept, but it's not interesting. It's not uplifting.
Well, again, where this is a technical rating, this is actually where, with what all that you just described, is a plus. Because, again, the focus isn't on the characters. It is on the function of the body as a whole, and that is the story that they are trying to convey. And so if they gave more personality, or if they gave more character stories going on, then what it does is it takes away from the story that they're actually trying to tell, and that would actually tank its rating technically in my book.
Which we've already said.
From an enjoyment perspective, okay, sure, I could take the hit on an enjoyment side, but on a technical side, that's a big plus for me.
So let's look at
because it executed on what it was trying to do really well in that sense.
I'll give you that.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that. So let's look at our rubric here. So a 2 being bad is the characters are sometimes unreasonable, confusing, inconsistent, unreasonably static or dynamic, and annoying.
There is one character that does that.
Good is the characters are often understandable, consistent, reasonable, adequately static, dynamic, and relatable. I'm just going to come out and say my thought for technical is going to be a 2. Because even though the design and the personality were both good, I think everything else that makes up a character was frustrating, annoying, especially the main characters in particular. The characters of the show overall as a cast, I think the entire cast was meh to good, like 3 to 4. But where the show was actually focused on 2 characters primarily, those 2 primary characters were all of the things in the bad category to me. What are your guys' thoughts?
This is where I'll toss in with you on the lower end too. Is I get that them having a simple personality is like lends to the show, Yet, even simple roles of the world have multi dimensions to them, and these characters, while uniform and while consistent and while building to their what they're trying to accomplish, are very one line. They just have one note.
Yeah.
And my hopes and aspirations to like flush through this idea could I would hope for more out of the characters, more than just one pillar of design in which they set their characters on top of.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. You know what? If this show didn't have the two main characters, if it didn't focus on them, I'd be rating this a 4 for characters.
For me, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't think so, because the two characters that had more dimensions, they didn't handle well.
No, wait, that's what I'm saying.
No,
the most of the characters in that show have one dimension. The two characters, the white blood cell and the red blood cell, have like quirks and are making mistakes or doing things off their limit.
But that to me was annoying and stupid.
That's what I'm saying. That's bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They did those two characters poorly, while the rest of the characters are not. They're. What I'm saying is the one-dimensional is not satisfying to me as a character standpoint.
Okay,
I wish they did more.
Sure. That's fair.
That's where they did good.
Sure, that's fair.
The two-dimensional characters aren't great, and so it's as an over arc, I'm not in love with these characters. I don't think they are great characters. They're baseline, like, palatable at best for what they're trying to do.
Like, I was more often angry when the two main characters were on screen than I was not.
Yeah, you just want to see the systems go, right?
And I'm not trying to tie this to my personal enjoyment, but I'm trying to tie it into the rubric, which is that we're saying that in category 2, the characters are annoying, unreasonable, inconsistent, those kind of things. What are your thoughts, Sky? Technical characters.
Yes.
So, technically on the characters, I actually think that for the role that they were trying to go, again, where it's a comedy, they fulfilled their roles as intended. But they didn't do it in a standout manner.
Yes.
Because, again, the whole premise of comedy, well, Red Blood Cell meets that. Was it an annoying implementation? Well, that's up to personal preference, and what's annoying to one person might not be to another. Like we said about the cast fulfilled their role flawlessly, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
And that's something that I brought up.
Yep, I agree with that.
And so, and even there, where it's like, the thing that I would really dock them on is being unreasonably static dynamic. But again, where there is no overarching storyline, what really is there for there to be progress on? Like, really?
And that's where I'm saying that they could have. I think that's what me and Bray say. They could have told this exact same. They could have had this exact same anime, but actually have characters that mattered. Actually have an underlying story. You said where? Osmosis Jones is an example. There's an actual underlying story that is like they could have done it. Is my point. Even in slice of life shows, the characters progress in some way, and where you compare this to a slice of life, they could have done it, but they didn't. And so I think that was very disappointing.
Right.
Lost opportunity.
Sure. But again, we're just like, with the type of story that they were going for, it's essentially like with Osmosis Jones, where Osmosis Jones did have an overarching story. That's why it worked. That's why you could have an overarching story inside the body as well.
Yeah, totally.
But where there was no overarching story on the outside or on the inside, there was no room for them to grow in that sense. And so where this is purely a character rating within the framework of the story, I'd give it a 3.
Okay.
Where it essentially meets expectations. It doesn't go above, it doesn't go below.
Okay. So you're giving it a 3. Me and Braydn are in the camp at 2. Would we feel good collectively if we said 2.5?
That's about how this math is going to work with their 10-point
Yep.
scale. Yeah.
All right. Last category should be probably pretty simple. This is delivery, which is the translation of the subtitles slash dub, the voice acting, and the script. So I'm gonna interject that the meh for me, on par with what I would expect from a good show. It didn't stand out for being exceptionally good or bad. It was just, I watch an anime, I expect to be able to understand it. The translations are there. There was medical terms that they had to get right, and so that was kind of good, but it wasn't like, oh, this is incredible, and the delivery wasn't like elevating. It didn't enrich the experience. It was just a well done delivery.
To be fair though, name anyone who isn't an enthusiast of a field reading about something like this going, this is incredible.
I mean that's true, but we're talking specifically about the translation and the voice acting.
Correct. And as you said, where it's like the reason that I would actually say that this is good on the translation side of things, possibly even exceptional, is because of those blocks of texts that you would have to, like, I had to pause just so I could read through it. And it made sense. And for something being that technical and that specific, they did really well in both the translations of the the translation of the sub.
Okay, those blocks of text are something I wanted to talk about because I really am not a fan when those pop up in anime. Personally,
Me too.
Those are generally points against anime for me.
Well,
because that's a lot of show. That's a lot of tell don't show. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, but at the same time, that's what the whole rest of the episode is going to be doing.
Yes.
And again, where this is an educational show,
you should
that's
be reading.
The one place that I would expect something of that type, because again, it's like hey, we're telling you this thing. Now, as you watch the rest of the show, you can watch and see how it actually plays out.
I get that if there is a show where it could exist, this is the setting. I would still propose that 9 times out of 10, the wall of text is. It does not contribute to the show being better.
I would offer maybe having a not a substitute, a handout to go with your show then. Like maybe have a reference number or something. So
a PDF you can print out.
No.
Yeah, because I don't want to see that wall of text in my anime. I don't want to.
You can do that in a classroom, not in just a...
That's what the show is!
That's what you're proposing.
That's what the show is!
That's what I'm saying. Is that mind break to go read about the mitochondria's powerhouse of the cell in the middle of an episode. I mean, I don't want that. I don't need that. I don't think I think it detracts from the story or detracts from the experience of the anime.
Let me put it this way: you don't have to read it to continue watching the show and understand what's going on. You just won't get the full context of what's going on. And so if you see the wall of text and you're just like, nah, okay, fine, whatever. Don't read it. You just won't know as much going forward compared to the person who did pause and did read it.
Yeah, but
so
I also
against that reader because if they thought that it was critical for you to understand, I guarantee that the voiceover lady would read out the block of text instead of having it pop up as a quick text block before continuing on.
It just because I watch a lot of on YouTube when people do that little flash where they just one frame show a thing. Ooh, what did I see? What did I miss? And this does that, and I'm never appeased by what I'm finding when I go for those spots. And that's, it's not just this anime either. I don't like when this happens in any anime.
Plus,
because those wall of text.
Plus, I would interject that that's not exceptional. Translating a paragraph, Google can do that. A guy studying Japanese at UVU can do that. Like Google maybe can't do it that well, but how much effort did it really take someone to sit down and translate a paragraph? None.
I
It was not
would
exceptional.
say
It was
against,
not
actually,
exceptional.
Let me put it this way. I read a decent amount of pirated manga, and you can tell who's using Google, who is a student, and who actually knows Japanese.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say against actually on you, Brett, as well on that, because if the translation's clean and understandable to common English, that's clean interpretation.
But here's my point. That's what I would expect from a decent show. I would expect a good translation of Japanese to English from a decent show. Nothing less and nothing more. So to me, it's there. It's meh. Did they do anything exceptional? I don't think so, because
Interesting.
I expect a good translation when I watch an anime. And that's it.
I have a note.
For the block of text, I put it in the good category, not the exceptional. Because again, the reason it's good is because it is very technical, very detailed information that they translated, kind of like Braydn, you're saying, in a really good way.
I'll give the translation as good. I do not feel it's an adequate way to present your anime.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair.
No.
So overall, translation, voice acting, script, I'm going to stick with a 3 because I don't think it did any, like, even if the wall of text was really good, it was a fraction of the show, and it's not enough to tip the scale for me over to it being good, because in the good category, it's that it elevates the whole experience of the show, and I don't think anything in the show, translation, voice acting, script wise, like took it to the next level for me. It was just what I would expect from a good show. So I'm sticking at 3 for technical and delivery.
Skyler, I want to hear your thoughts, because I honestly, as much as we argue, I trust your technical scoring better than myself. So I want to hear what you have to say so I can properly, put some thoughts forward. Please go ahead.
Right. So the reason that I would give the translation for the subdub at good is, again, because of the medical terminology, and because that is just frankly harder to do. Even native English people can't phrase stuff like that properly. And so that you're taking it from one language into another language and you're doing it well, that's why it's good. I wouldn't throw it into exceptional, but it's good.
Granted, 90%
Because, again, that's hard.
of 90% of medical terms in Japanese are just English.
Sure. But again, their grammar structures and everything else is still different. And there's a lot of Japanese words. Well, that's a whole other history lesson that I can go into there.
Sure.
But voice acting, again, it was on par. There was never any time that the voice acting broke or was like, oh, that line was oddly delivered.
Yeah.
Nothing that way stood out. And that also kind of goes with the script, which is where it's like, it was meh. The script was meh.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it did its job, which is why I'm between a 3.5 and a 4.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that really runs it out to me, because I mean, I'll agree the translation was good. Like, for the amount of stuff they had to bring over, yeah, they did a good job. And then against, like, they have a good mark against, though. It's something we haven't really talked about, is the voice acting was typical screaming anime, which is not a good thing.
If it's what the script calls for, I mean, I don't like screaming anime, but
I don't
did
either.
they accomplish the screaming well? I think they accomplished it decently. They screamed good.
I'm just saying, like,
to that point, there was only really one character type that was screaming. I wonder which character type that was.
What I'm more referring to is, like, there wasn't
there wasn't ever a moment for a voice actor to really
there wasn't inflection.
do
There wasn't yes
to stand
thank you.
out. Yeah.
Perhaps need better words.
Yeah.
Yet it was pretty one level
Yeah.
acting, in my opinion.
You're either like doing the traditional, the red blood cell is either like having the traditional whiny voice of like, oh no, I don't know where the door is for the room, and then the white blood cell is like, here I am, I'm a white blood cell. Oh, there's a thing. That's like all 3 tones in the whole show.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I wouldn't say it's particularly great, but overall, I think I'll line it towards a 3, maybe a 3.5, but I think I'll hardly more handily say a 3 on that one.
I'd be willing to go up to a 3.5. I think the arguments are pretty strong for that. I go up to a 3.5.
3.5, yeah.
Okay. I'll
Okay.
take it.
Okay. A very interesting technical assessment of Cells at Work. A lot harder to have than the enjoyment, for sure. But here's where we're at. For art, we give it a 4. Story, we give it a 3. Characters, a 2.5. And delivery, a 3.5, which brings our total technical score for Cells at Work to 6.5 out of 10. 6.5 out of 10. And it could very easily be anywhere from a 5.5 to a 7.5 based on our discussions. So kind of in there, but we're centering around 6.5 after all the discussions. So, to wrap things up, comparisons and recommendations. Did Cells at Work remind you of anything? Skyler, you brought up 2 shows. What were they?
Asteroid in Love and I guess kind of Eurocamp.
Okay, Eurocamp and I don't like Slice of Life, but I might watch the Eurocamp one because I love camping. So
No, actually, I might have Eurocamp come up for an anime.
Oh,
club
sick.
Oh.
Okay.
because-
All right,
Nice.
good. I want to watch that one because I love camping. And see, this is where if I was a doctor, I might love watching Cells at Work. Okay, so Eurocamp and Asteroid Love. Braydn.
So speaking of Eurocamp, though, quick interjection.
Yeah.
There's another thing that Eurocamp does that I really like.
Okay.
But we'll either have to watch that and have that as another episode, or throw it for Anime Club,
Sweet.
and then get people's discussion on that.
Heck yeah. Braydn, did it remind you of anything, or would you recommend anything?
I mean, we've said it 1,000 times. Osmosis Jones. If you wanted some good medical, body and acting by whatever the actor's name is. Who's the main? Who's the main guy? Who's the host of that show? You guys remember?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bill Murray.
He's funny. Does a good job. Go watch that. It's great. You have a good one with that. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie.
I agree. I'm going to throw out a wild recommendation that most people will probably be offended at. I'm going to say One Punch Man.
Oh, great. No, I don't have it. Please.
Okay, hear me out. Let me give my reasons for One Punch Man, okay?
Please.
If you liked in Cells at Work the over the top, almost comical level of up to 11, but you didn't like the educational flat characters piece, you liked the animation, but you wanted more story, I would recommend One Punch Man. It's got the way over the top, the hyper stylized animation. But it has a lot of the things that we said Cells at Work was missing. So if you like those parts of Cells at Work, I think One Punch Man. One Punch Man also has a very unique sense of humor that will define whether or not you enjoy the show. Cells at Work has a very unique niche, which is the biology aspect, that if you like that part, you'll like the show. So those are some weird parallels I'm drawing. It's out on a limb, but
Great.
I would say One Punch Man.
I mean, more people should go be watching One Punch Man anyway, so absolutely. Take it. Take the recommendation.
And this is coming
Go
from
watch
someone
it.
who doesn't like either show. But I can see the merits of both. So, I would not recommend Cells at Work to most people. But for certain people, I would say, oh yeah, you should watch Cells at Work. For sure. Anyway. Okay, so as a recap, let's recap everything we did. We talked about Cells at Work Season 1. We took a lot of side roads into
it was a journey to get there.
into Cells at Work, Black Plague, and all these other avenues. We came down to an enjoyment rating collectively for each of us at 5.5 with a 7 of 5 and a 4.5, and then we came to agree on the technical ranking of 6.5 for Cells at Work with a 4, 3, 2.5, and 3.5. So that was this week's episode, a rather intense episode to be sure. Next week, we're going to be covering Haikyuu, the volleyball sports anime, available on Crunchyroll. We'll be covering season 1. Again, check out all of our social media: Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. Arigato for watching, listening, and until next time, Jane.
Peace.
See ya.
事件最近だ近いぞぶっ殺せぶっ殺すんだ